We're approaching a very special Yom Tov. It comes only 7 times in 19 years. That's the Yom Tov of Purim Katan. Tomorrow night is Purim Katan. Only happens on a leap year. And a leap year is 7 times in 19 years. The Shulchan Aruch Eir HaChaim, we know that the Shulchan Aruch has 4 parts to it. First part is called Eir HaChaim, the path of life, goes through the daily life of a Jew, the weekly cycle, the monthly cycle, and the yearly cycle. Talks about the obligations that a Jew has throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year. And then you have the section of Yeder Deya, which speaks about the permissible and the forbidden. You have the section of Eben HaEzer, which talks about family matters. And you have the section of Chesed Mishpah that talks about monetary laws. But the Eir HaChaim section, is the first section of Shulchan Aruch, has 697 chapters. Chapter 697, the final chapter of Chelik Eir HaChaim of Shulchan Aruch, is the laws of Purim, Katan, and Shushan Purim. Now, at first glance, the reason why this is the case, simply speaking, is because the Shulchan Aruch is set out according to the cycle of time. So it starts off with getting up in the morning. First siman of the laws of getting up in the morning, laws of Kriyat Shema, tzitzis, tefillin, davening, learning Torah after davening, going to how a Jew should earn a livelihood, the dinim of davening mincha, ma'ariv, going to bed, goes through the day. Then he goes through the laws of Shabbos. Every week we have Shabbos. It's a big chunk of laws, but the laws of Shabbos, they're very complicated. The laws of Shabbos, the laws of Eruvin. And then it moves on to the laws of Rosh Chodesh. And then it moves on to the yearly cycle. So it starts off with Pesach. Pesach is the Rosh L'Regalim. It's the first of the foot festivals. Chodesh Hazel Lachem Reish Chadashim, the first of the month of Nisan, is the first month. So it starts with Hilchos Pesach, and then after Pesach you have the laws of Shviras HaEmer, the laws of Shavuos, the laws of Tisha B'Av, the laws of Chodesh Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Zeres Shmei Tshuva, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, Chanukah, and then Purim. So Purim is the last thing on the line. So the laws of Purim are at the very end of
he does an introduction first about Yom Tov or whatever.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please? Yeah, there are laws of Yom Tov as well. Yes. Okay. So and then Purim is at the very end. Now, why is Purim Katan after Purim? You might say if it goes according to the cycle of the year, then Purim Katan comes before Purim. Why is Purim Katan after Purim? So you could give 2 simple answers. One simple answer is Purim comes more frequently than Purim Katan does. Purim is every year. Purim Katan is only 7 times in 19 years. And we have a principle, Tadir v'she'ena Tadir, Tadir Kedem. You have something that's more frequent and something which is less frequent. The more frequent, it comes first. Or it could be explained on a slightly deeper level. Now, what is Purim Katan? Purim Katan are the days in Adar Rishon which correspond to Purim and Shushan Purim. So the source of the Yom Tov is Purim and Shushan Purim. But because these days in Adar Rishon are exactly the same days of the month as Purim and Shushan Purim, would it not have been a leap year, this would have been Purim. So as an extension of Purim, influenced by the intense joy of Purim, we also celebrate Purim Katan and Shushan Purim. So there's a cause and the effect. The cause is Purim, and the effect is Purim Katan. So first you learn about the cause, and then the effect. So first you have the laws of Purim. After you have the laws of Purim, it's, by the way, on the 14th and the 15th of Adar Rishon, there's also a minor celebration, because it's the days that are parallel to Purim and Shushan Purim. So that is the simple understanding of why the laws of Purim in general and the laws of Purim Katan specifically come at the very end of Shulchan Aruch Eir HaChaim. However, we know that everything in Torah is exact. Nothing is just by the way. And if the conclusion of Shulchan Aruch Eir HaChaim is with the laws of Purim, and specifically with the laws of Purim Cotton, there must be a reason for it. Not just that it happens to come out that way. There must be something that the conclusion of Chelek Erech Chaim has to do with Purim in general and Purim Cotton specifically. So the first thing to do to get a grip on this would be to look at this chapter, this last chapter, the final chapter in Shulchan Aruch Erech Chaim. Let me just say by way of introduction that the Shulchan Aruch is written by Rabbi Yosef Karo, and Rabbi Yosef Karo follows generally the rulings of the Sephardic sages. He was Sephardic, and he follows generally the rulings of the Sephardic sages. In order for the Shulchan Aruch to be user-friendly also for Ashkenazim, there was a great man called the Ramah, Moshe Isserlish, who wrote, Shulchan Aruch means a set table. So the Ramah wrote an addendum to the Shulchan Aruch called the Mapas HaShulchan, the tablecloth. A table means a tablecloth. So, and from then on, any time that the Shulchan Aruch is printed, the words of the Mechaber, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, Yosef Karo, are printed together with the Mapas HaShulchan by the Ramah. To be able to distinguish, the words of the Mechaber are in black letters, and the words of the Ramah are in Rashi letters. So this, a very short simon, the laws of Purim Katan, Shushan Purim Katan. The Mechaber, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, writes as follows. He says, Yom Yudalad b'Tetzaveh Shabbat Rishon, the 14th and the 15th of the first Adar, which is tomorrow night, Thursday night, Friday, and Shabbos this year. Ein neiflim al pneihem. There's no tachnun. Ein neimim mizmer Yancha Hashem b'yem tzara, and we don't say after Ashrei in the morning between Ashrei and Avotzin, we normally say Lamanatzeach mizmer David Yancha Hashem b'yem tzara, but on happy days we omit it. The asur behesped v'tainis. It's forbidden to make a eulogy on these days. Forbidden to fast on these days. But all other matters of Purim don't apply. So we don't read the Megillah, we don't send Shalach Manis, we don't have to have a Suda, we don't have to have Matavis Lavyaim, we don't say Al Anisim, we don't read from the Torah. The things which we normally do on Purim don't apply. Just that we don't say Tachnun, we don't say Lamanatzeach Mizn David Yancha Hashem B'Yem Tzara, and we don't fast, and we don't eulogize. And there are those that say the hesped the tainis mutar. That it's also permissible as a more lenient opinion that says you can even eulogize and fast. It's according to this second opinion, it's a very minor festival. And the Ramah puts in his gloss, and he says v'haminik hisvara harishayin. The custom, the accepted custom, is like the first opinion that we don't say tachnun and we don't say lamanasiyach mi'ancha and we don't eulogize and we don't fast. We do consider it to be a significant days of joy. So these 2 days of Purim Katan and Shushan Purim Katan are considered significant days of joy. Then the Ramah says, there is an opinion that holds that there's an obligation to make a feast, to increase in feasting and celebrating and rejoicing on the 14th of Adar. This is actually, there was a Rabbi Shiur of Paris, quoted, the famous Rishon, who used to hold a big Suda on Purim Katan, like a Purim Suda. He used to invite guests. And he celebrated Purim Katan very similar to the way we celebrate Purim, in the sense of, as far as the Suda was concerned. And he based himself on a Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Ein bein Adar Rishon la Adar Sheni, Ela Mikra Megillah Matanas Lavyainu. There's no difference between the first Adar and second Adar. There's no difference in the way we celebrate Purim in the first Adar and the way we celebrate Purim in the second Adar, except that the reading of the Megillah and gifts to the poor. So in the first Adar we don't read the Megillah, and the second Adar we do. The first Adar we don't give Matanas Lavyainu. I mean, it's okay to give tzedakah, but there's no mitzvah of Matanas Lavyainu. While in the second Adar there is a mitzvah of Matanas Lavyainu, which implies that as far as all other matters are concerned, such as Sudas Purim and Simcha, they're equal. And therefore, the Shiur in Paris used to make every year, and whenever there was Purim Katan, he used to make a Suda and invite guests and celebrate in a similar way, the way we would celebrate the proper Purim. So the Ramah brings this Yesh Einim. There are those that say that there's an obligation to increase in feasting and rejoicing on the 14th of Adar Rishon. But this is not the accepted custom. So most of the Jewish people, you go into a Jewish house on Purim Katan, you're not going to find a Suda like on Purim Katan. When we call Makim, nevertheless, says the Ramah, Yarbek Tzas Besuda. It is appropriate to increase somewhat in the Suda. They lotzeis they have achmirim in order to do it according to the more stringent opinion. So it's a good idea to increase somewhat in the Suda and then he concludes with a pasuk from Mishlei. V'toiv leiv mishtatam. One who is glad at heart is always feasting. This is what Shlomo Melech says in Mishnah. So a Jew, Baruch Hashem, we're a zeicha to be Hashem's chosen people. We have such a great Torah and such great mitzvahs, and the Eibush is with us and he looks after us. And a Yid should always be b'simcha. So whenever the implication is that if there's two opinions, to feast or not to feast, go for it, feast. A Yid should always be feasting. A Yid should always be rejoicing. And that is the conclusion of the Shulchan Aruch Erech Chaim, the words of the Ramah, the Toiv Leiv Mishtatam. So the Chidah, great Sephardic sage, Reb Chaim Yosef David Azulai, known as the Chidah, wrote many svarim. One of his svarim was the Birkei Yosef. And he writes in the Sefer Birkei Yosef, he points out something very interesting. He says that the Shulchan Aruch, the glosses of the Ramah, and the first thing in the Shulchan Aruch, it talks about the laws of getting up in the morning. So the Ramah begins his words with the pasuk, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi sami. I always place Hashem before me, continuously, constantly. And he says that a Jew, when he gets up in the morning, the first thing that has to cross his mind is that Hashem is standing right next to me. And he says a person's behavior, knowing that he's in the presence of a great king, is not the same as a person sitting on the living room couch when nobody's around. So when you get up in the morning, the first thought that should cross your mind is Shivisi Hashem lenegdi sami. Hashem is right next to me. Hashem is with me. And therefore I have to conduct myself in accordance as I'm standing in front of a great king, standing in front of Hashem. And therefore a person should get up with devotion and dedication and appropriately and properly, knowing that he's being called now to the service of Hashem. So the Birkei Yosef points out that the Shulchan Aruch starts with the pasuk Shivisi Hashem lenegdi sami. I place Hashem before me continuously. That's one tamid, and ends with the pasuk Shulchan Aruch Erech Chaim ends with the pasuk Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid. One who's glad at heart is always feasting. So we have two tamids. One tamid at the beginning of the Shulchan Aruch Erech Chaim, and one tamid at the end of the Shulchan Aruch Erech Chaim. It's like in the Beis Hamikdash. They began the Avodah every day with a carbon tamid in the morning, and concluded the Avodah every afternoon with a carbon tamid in the afternoon. So you have a tamid at the beginning and a tamid at the end. What are these two tamids? The first one is Shivisi Hashem lenegdi sami. I place Hashem before me continuously. That is the concept of Ivdu with Hashem b'yira. Serve Hashem with awe. And then Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid is Ivdu with Hashem b'simcha. What's the idea of putting these two poles at the end, at the beginning, at the end of Shulchan Aruch Erech Chaim? It's very simple. Shulchan Aruch Erech Chaim is a sefer that talks, as we said before, about the cycle of the day, the cycle of the year. It talks about every halacha in Shulchan Aruch Erech Chaim only pertains to a specific time. The halachas of getting up in the morning pertain in the morning. The halachas of davening pertain in the time of davening. The halachas of eating pertain of eating. The halachas of Shabbos pertain on Shabbos. The halachas of Pesach pertain on Pesach. Doesn't pertain on Shavuos. Right? The halachas of Shavuos pertain on Shavuos, not on Pesach. The halachas of Sukkot pertain on Sukkot. All the way through to the halachas of Purim. But at the very beginning and at the very end, he makes a statement which is pertinent at every minute of the day, every minute of the week, every minute of the year, throughout our lives. And that permeates the entire Shulchan Aruch Erech Chaim. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi sami. Whatever you're doing, always remember that Hashem is with you and next to you. And whatever you're doing, always be b'simcha. Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid. These are the two tamids. These are the two ongoing messages that permeate the entire Shulchan Aruch Erech Chaim, which everything in Shulchan Aruch Erech Chaim refers to a specific time and not others. And these two things are tamid, and they permeate the entire Shulchan Aruch Erech Chaim. Therefore, they're put at the beginning and at the end of the Shulchan Aruch. So these are the two principles: serve Hashem with awe and serve Hashem with joy. So where does serve Hashem with joy, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi sami, where does it belong? So we know that in our calendar, every midah in Avodas Hashem, every measure, every approach, every way of serving Hashem has a date on the calendar from which it nourishes its inspiration. For example, Kabbalas El Malchus Shamayim, acceptance of the yoke of the heavenly kingship, that nourishes inspiration from Rosh Hashanah. In Rosh Hashanah, we blow shofar and we announce that Hashem is king, and we say, Avinu Malkeinu Ein Lanu Melech Ela Ata, our Father, our King, we have no king other than you. We give ourselves over to you completely. We say Psuke Malchiyos, and that inspires us for the whole year to have Kabbalas El Malchus Shamayim, acceptance of the yoke of heaven. Then you have so every midah, every tshuva, let's say, we get from Yom Kippur for the whole year. So where do we get simcha from for the whole year? So what's the most joyous day of the year? Most joyous day of the year is Purim. It's the only day of the year when there's chayiv laharbais b'mishta v'simcha. We're obligated to really go all the way with feasting and rejoicing. Chayiv inish l'psumim Purim adula yada. A person should get intoxicated on Purim, but he doesn't know the difference. This is unique. It's only Purim. So therefore, Purim is the day from which we get joy for the whole year. So if we get joy from Purim for the whole year, it makes sense that the message of Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid, the one who was glad in heart, should always be feasting, should come from Purim. Therefore, the final halachas of Shulchan Aruch Erech, which end with Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid, are in the laws of Purim. You might ask, we have a Yom Tov that's called Zman Simchas Seinu, the Yom Tov of Sukkot. Surely Zman Simchas Seinu, the Yom Tov of Sukkot, deserves to be the source of simcha for the whole year, and especially since it's in the month of Tishrei. The month of Tishrei is the Reish. Tishrei Oisius Reishis. The letters Tishrei, if you scramble them, makes the word Reishis. Reish Shin Yud Sod, which means the head, the beginning. And in the head, you have all the components that are necessary to lead the whole body. Therefore, in the head, you have Rosh Hashanah, which gives us, as we said before, Kabbalah, so Shamayim for the whole year. You have Yom Kippur, which gives us Tshuva for the whole year. You have Sukkot, which gives us Simchas Mitzvah. And you have Simchas Torah, which gives us Simchas HaTorah. So it would seem that the appropriate date for drawing inspiration of Simcha for the whole year should have been Sukkot, Man Simchas Torah. Why suddenly Purim? In fact, there's support for this from the Rambam. The Rambam in Hilchas Sukkah V'Lulav speaks about the special joy that took place in the Beis Hamikdash on the Yom Tov of Sukkot. How in the nights of Sukkot they would fetch the water, be able to pour on the Mizbeach on Sukkot. Normally, they poured on the Mizbeach on the altar in the Beis Hamikdash. They poured every day wine. And Sukkot also poured water. The fetching of the water on the night before was a major event. You draw water with joy from the fountains of salvation. So the drawing of the water on the nights of Sukkot was a major celebration. And the Rambam describes how the great sages would lead the celebration, and it was very, very vibrant. It was very, very energetic, very powerful. And then the Rambam says the joy that a Jew rejoices in the service of Hashem is a great avodah. So you see from the way that Rambam puts it that the idea of serving Hashem with joy comes from the joy of Sukkot in general, and especially Simchas Beis HaSheyegim, which is part of the mitzvah of celebrating on Yom Tov. So why are we suddenly replacing that with Purim? So there's two parts to the answer. The Rambam is speaking about the joy that took place in the Beis Hamikdash on Sukkot. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, Yidden were in a higher madrega, and every day of the year they were able to relate to some extent, to what it was like to be on Sukkot and what it was like to be in the Beis Hamikdash on Sukkot. But then, because of our many sins, we were exiled, we were put in Golus, and in Golus, Yidden are having a rough ride. And it's very difficult when we're in Golus to be able to relate to, especially on a regular day, saying Yiddish Napashta Mitvach, on a regular Wednesday. Wednesday is a pretty good day over here this year, but normally is an expression. Mitna Mitvach, in the middle of a regular Wednesday, right smack in the middle of the week, it's not so close to Shabbos on this side, not so close to Shabbos on that side. And to be able to feel that you can connect with the experience of Sukkot in general, and especially Sukkot in the Beis Hamikdash, when you're in Golus on a weekday, very difficult to make that connection. So therefore, in Golus, the Almighty gave us an additional Yom Tov, and it's a Golus Yom Tov. It's a Yom Tov that the decree and the miracle that rescued us from the decree took place in Golus. And that's the Yom Tov of Purim. Also, Purim is not a festival in the sense you're allowed to drive a car in Purim. You're allowed to switch on a light in Purim. It's not a Yom Tov in the sense that it should be forbidden to do work. So it's more similar to a regular weekday. So it's easier to relate to the joy of Purim on a regular weekday than it is to relate to the joy of Sukkot in general, which is a Yom Tov. And especially the joy of Sukkot in the Beis HaMikdash. So far from us. So during the time of the Beis HaMikdash, Yidden could nourish their inspiration for Ivdus Hashem B'Simcha from Sukkot, and especially from the joy of Sukkot in the Beis HaMikdash. But in the time of Golus, Purim is a little bit more accessible. And this is actually interesting because the Rambam mentions the mitzvah of rejoicing in the service of Hashem in connection with Sukkot. And the Shulchan Aruch mentions it in connection with Purim. What's the difference in the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch? The Rambam is the only sefer that collects all the halachas of the Torah, both those that apply nowadays, as well as those that applied in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. So the Rambam includes the laws that were only applicable in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, the laws of sacrifices, the laws of purity and spiritual purity and impurity that are only pertinent when we have the Beis HaMikdash, and many other laws of Shemitah, Yovel, Jubilee year, not pertinent today. So these laws are collected in the Rambam because the Rambam collects all the halachas of the Torah, those that are pertinent in the time of Beis HaMikdash and those that are pertinent in the time of Golus. However, the Shulchan Aruch only includes the halachas that are pertinent nowadays. There's no laws of sacrifices in the Shulchan Aruch. There's no laws of spiritual purity and impurity and where it's not pertinent nowadays. There's no laws of the Jubilee year in Shulchan Aruch. It only deals with the laws that are pertinent nowadays. So the Rambam, that's a sefer that applies also during the time of Beis HaMikdash. He puts in about the joy that took place in the Beis HaMikdash on Sukkot, and in conjunction with that, he says the joy that a Jew serves Hashem all year round, because that comes from the joy in the Beis HaMikdash on Sukkot. But the Shulchan Aruch was written specifically for the time of Golus. Time of Golus, you get your joy from Purim. However, we still want to understand Purim, okay, but why Purim Katan? Especially since Purim Katan is itself not such a joyous day, right? We said that there's those that say that Purim Katan, you should make a big celebration, but it's not the accepted custom. So how can that provide joy for every day of the year? And also, not every year has a Purim Katan, right? There are years that have a Purim Katan, like this year, a leap year, and there's other years, like last year and next year, that don't have a Purim Katan. So how could Purim Katan be the provider of joy for the whole year if not every year has a Purim Katan? So the answer to this question we can appreciate by a little introduction. When it comes to the mitzvah of rejoicing on Yom Tov, so we have a mitzvah sasei min haTorah, positive mitzvah in the Torah, v'samachta b'chagech. You should rejoice on Yom Tov. A mitzvah. It's like the mitzvah to eat matzah on Pesach night, a mitzvah to hear shofar on Rosh Hashanah. It's a mitzvah to rejoice on Yom Tov. Samachta b'chagech. When? Every Yom Tov. Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. Then we have the concept of Simchas Beis HaShe'eva we mentioned before. Special joy that takes place on the nights of Sukkot in connection with the time of the Beis HaMikdash, in connection with fetching the water to pour on the Mizbeach. And nowadays, there's a commemoration of that joy. That's the second level of joy. Then we have the next level of joy. After Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, what's the next level of joy? Hakafos. So, the Samachta b'chagecha is a pasuk in the Torah. It's a mitzvah sasei min haTorah. It's one of the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. It's one of the 248 positive mitzvahs. Samachta b'chagecha. You have to rejoice on Yom. Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, the whole idea of pouring water on the Mizbeach on Sukkot, is halacha l'Moshe Sinai. It's not written in the written law. It was given to Moshe Rabbeinu at Sinai orally. It's alluded to in the Torah by an extra mem, an extra yud, an extra mem, but it's not written clearly in the Torah. It's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. And the rejoicing that is associated with Simchas Beis HaShe'eva it goes with that. Then comes Hakafos. Where's the source of Hakafos? Say anywhere in the Torah you have to make Hakafos on Simchas Torah? No. Was it halacha l'Moshe Sinai? Also not. Where does Hakafos come from? So in Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah writes that since the last day of Yom Tov, we conclude the Torah. So there's a custom to rejoice. Take out all the Sifrei Torah and to dance with them, go around the bima and to dance with them. It's a custom. It's a minute. So v'samachta b'chagecha is a positive mitzvah in the Torah. Simchas beis hasheyeva is one notch lower. Halacha l'meisha misin. Hakafis is a minute. So what would you expect? You would expect that the v'samachta b'chagecha, which is a mitzvah same in Torah, should be tremendous. Yeah. Simchas beis hasheyeva, which is halacha l'meisha misin, should be a notch lower, a little bit more relaxed. And hakafis, which is just a minute, take out a food potato, you go around the bima, go put them back, and go to sleep. What actually happens? We all try our best. And it doesn't. It's not a major event. Simchas beis hasheyeva, music and dancing, it's an event. Hakafis goes totally over the top. Seems to be going the wrong direction. So the explanation is like this. In order to rejoice properly, have pure joy, as long as there's some kind of tension, it's difficult to fully rejoice. When you have an obligation to discharge, you have an obligation to fulfill, the obligation weighs on you. Right? The Torah told me I have to do this, right? I have to check, am I doing it right? Yeah. So there's a certain amount of pressure. So when there's a mitzvah, samachta b'chagecha, the fact itself that there's an obligation to rejoice somehow puts a constraint on it. When it's halacha l'meisha misinai, it's less of an obligation, so you're more relaxed about it. So the joy could be more expressive. Hakafis is only a minute, no pressure at all. It's a custom, Yidden within themselves. When they finish the whole Torah, we're all so excited that even though nobody told us we have to, it's our custom to express our excitement in the fact that we finished the Torah by dancing and singing and rejoicing. It's coming from within. It's not coming from an obligation. So the greater the obligation, the more restrained the simcha. The lesser the obligation, the greater the simcha. So bearing that in mind, let's talk about Purim. Purim is a very joyous day. Very joyous. But nevertheless, Purim has various obligations. There's 4 mitzvahs on Purim, right? The mitzvah of reading the Megillah night and day. And it's quite a heavy one because you have to hear every word, right? You come to shul and you try to hear every word, and if you've missed one word, you're not yotze. So it puts a little bit of pressure on you. Then there's a mitzvah of Mishleach Manos. You have to send 2 food gifts to at least one friend, right? So it has to be set different brachas. Not have to be set different brachas. The Rabbanim have time to do darshan about it. It's Mapanos Lav Yainim, you have to find a poor person, 2 poor people, and you give them both gifts. And even the Suda, which we hold at the end of the day, because we're busy most of the day doing the other mitzvahs of Purim. We're busy fulfilling our obligations. But the expression of the greatest expression of joy, which is at the Suda, only comes towards the end of the day. And even at the Suda, we know we're obligated to have a Suda. You have to make sure you wash, you have to make sure you kazayis, right? There's rules. So the rules put some constraint on the joy. When is there a Yom Tov of joy that has no rules whatsoever? Purim Katan. There's an opinion that says that there's an obligation to increase in joy and feasting on the 14th of Adar, but it's not the accepted custom. So we don't have that obligation, says the Rambam. And he says, Mikoma, okay, nevertheless, well, my recommendation, he says, Yarbek Tzas Besuda should increase somewhat in the feasting. One who is glad at heart should always be feasting. Does he say it's a custom to feast? No. Even our kafis, which is only a custom, but it's a custom that's quoted in Shulchan Aruch. A custom that's quoted in Shulchan Aruch is also an obligation. An obligation to keep that custom. By Purim Katan, the Ramah is very careful in his lashon. He doesn't say that this is the required custom. Just be relaxed. Yeah, why not? Let's feast. Big Yom Tov, Purim Katan. Eibishter saved us. Let's celebrate. Why not? No pressure. You feel like celebrating, celebrate. You don't feel like celebrating, don't celebrate. You should feel like celebrating. Every Jew should always feel like we're so lucky. We have such an incredible Almighty. given us such a beautiful Torah and such beautiful mitzvahs, and He's always with us. And Kolke, we say by Purim Shoshanas Yaakov, Kolke V'echol Lo Yevaishu. The message of Purim is that all this put the trust in you and will never be embarrassed. Lo Yikomu Lo Netzach Kol HaCheisim Bach, will never be ashamed. Those that rely on you. So Hashem is always with us. Such an incredible thing. Of course, we should be rejoicing. Another thing, even though Purim you're allowed to drive a car and allowed to switch on lights, but it's not exactly like a weekday, right? We dress Shabbosdik and we have Shabbat. It's not so easy on a regular day of the year to connect with the way you felt on Purim. But Purim Katan, on one hand, it's very relaxed in the sense that there's no requirements, there's no obligations of joy, not even a minhag that's quoted in Shulchan Aruch. It doesn't even say you have to in Shulchan Aruch as a custom. And at the same time, and it's a very weekday kind of day. So this is the day that actually gives us the ability to inspire simcha, the toiv leiv mishta tamid kind of simcha, for every day of the year. And it's so powerful that not only can it inspire simcha for every day of the year, it can inspire simcha for the next 3 years until we get the Purim Katan.
Why is it listening to the answer?
Yeah, the question that Mrs. Morris just asked, for those that couldn't hear on the Zoom, is why is that Purim is not a full Yom Tov, not driving and not working? So there's 2 parts to the answer. First part of the answer is that only those Yom Tovim that are mentioned in the 5 books of the Torah the Torah says they're forbidden to do work. Right? So the Yom Tovim that are Midrabanan, like Hanukkah and Purim, there is no prohibition of work. However, it does say that Esther suggested to the Sanhedrin that it should be a proper Yom Tov. She made various requests of the Sanhedrin in the way that Purim should be established. And one of the things that she asked, it should be a proper Yom Tov as far as prohibiting work, and the Sanhedrin turned her down on that. So they agreed to the reading of the Megillah and the rejoicing, but they make it a Yom Tov, mamish like Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, so you're not at work. The Sanhedrin did not go along. So your question is the same as Esther Amalka's question. Very good question. The Gemara talks about that. The Gemara gives 3 answers. The question, okay, thank you. So Mrs. Glick asks, what about Hallel? Why don't we say Hallel on Purim? Such an incredible miracle. Hanukkah we say Hallel, why shouldn't we say Hallel on Purim? So the Gemara asks this question, and the Gemara gives various answers. One of the answers the Gemara gives is that we only say Hallel on a miracle that happened in Eretz Yisrael. So of course you'll ask, but what about Pesach? Pesach didn't happen in Eretz Yisrael. That was before Eretz Yisrael was established as the land for the Jewish people, before the Jewish people arrived in Eretz Yisrael. But once the Jewish people arrived in Eretz Yisrael, only miracles that happened in Eretz Yisrael get a Hallel. Another answer the Gemara gives is that the Megillah itself is the Hallel. Reading the Megillah is the Hallel. You don't have to say Hallel twice. And the third answer the Gemara says is, it says at the beginning of Hallel, Hallelu Avdei Hashem, that the servants of Hashem should praise Hashem. So after the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim, we're no longer the servants of Pharaoh. We became the servants of Hashem. Therefore, it's appropriate to say, Hallelu Avdei Hashem, Hallelu Hashem Hashem, the servants of Hashem, to praise the name of Hashem. But after the story of Purim, even after Haman was hung and after Jewish people were spared, we remained Avdei Achashverosh. Achashverosh still remained in power, and we still remained his servants. So we weren't liberated from the servitude to Golus and to Gentile monarchy. Therefore, it's inappropriate to say a Hallel, which starts with the words Hallelu Avdei Hashem, when we're still servants of Hashem. Those are the 3 answers that the Gemara gives to the question. We're always Avdei Hashem, but by Pesach, it's emphasized that as a result of this miracle, we became Avdei Hashem. In other words, we're no longer the servants of Pari, now we're servants of Hashem, only Hashem.
Yes, still.
Even when we're subject to monarchy, we're servants of Hashem, and that's on a much higher level than any other servitude that we have. But when we're talking about thanking Hashem for a miracle, so when the miracle is like in the story of Hanukkah, even, where after the story of Hanukkah, the Jewish people gained independence from the Greeks. So it's appropriate to say, Hallelu Avdei Hashem, we're no longer the servants of Antiochus, Now we're the servants of Hashem to exclusion of any other monarchy. While by the story of Purim, we can't say that. Those are the three answers that the Gemara gives. I hope at least one of them is satisfactory. Okay. So now that we have what to look forward to with an incredible Purim Katan, the Shushan Purim Katan coming up, especially this year when it comes out ahead of Shabbos on Shabbos, now we're going to move on to Tanya. The whole way it all comes together is the and what I quoted from the Ramah is from the Ramah, and what I quoted from Birkei Yosef is from the Birkei Yosef. But putting it together in this way, what the Rebbe has to say. I hope I gave it over correctly. So we're on page in Tanya. We're on page 144. Numbers on top of the page. Somebody's going to have to pinch it over here and tell us what the number on the bottom of the page is.
271, 272.
Oh, thank you, Sufferin. I was frightened for a minute. So it's 272.
271, 272. Yeah.
271, 272. Okay. We're nearly at the end of Perek Nun Aleph.
Yeah, my marker was on the previous page. Okay.
We just went over the page. I think we're up to the words ach. Best of my knowledge, we're up to the words ach b'soicham. On the top of page 144.
All right. Thank you.
We were discussing in the last year the fact that there's such a variation between the various creations. Even though Hashem is everywhere and equally everywhere, and His infinite light is everywhere, nevertheless, the energy, the divine energy that gives life and sustenance to the creations in a revealed way, changes very much from the higher worlds to the lower worlds. And we explained how the higher worlds are much more aware and sensitive to Hashem's presence. While as you go down the worlds, there's more tzimtzumim, there's more contractions. And then there's hislabshus, the energy, the divine creative force is enclosed in garments and thicker garments, and yet thicker garments and more garments, till it becomes completely concealed. And when you come down to the lowest world, you're in a world where godly presence is almost not felt at all. If you look at a physical object in this world, it doesn't tell you the Almighty is creating me every second from nothing to something. It's telling you I'm here. And in the higher worlds, that's not the case. In the higher worlds, you recognize in the higher realms, there's a recognition, there's an awareness of Hashem's role and Hashem's effect on their existence. That obviously has many, many levels. And as you go down from the higher worlds to the lower worlds, that becomes diminished. And the lowest point of that process of diminishing the revelation of godliness in the system of the worlds, the lowest point is this physical world. So that's the idea of this world being called the lowest world, because the energy, the creative energy that comes down to this world is enclosed and concealed through the maximum amount of garments and concealments and contractions. Then we said that in this world itself, you have the human, the animal, and the vegetable, and then the mineral. So in the human and the animal, you might not be able to identify it as godly life, but you see life. And we know that that life is godly energy, godliness. In the vegetable, you don't really see life, but you see growth, which is also a sign of life. So you can identify some form of life, even in a vegetable. But when it comes to a mineral, a stone, piece of earth, all you see is existence. You don't see any life at all. And that is because there's the maximum amount of concealment of Hashem's creative energy to the point that you can't even recognize it as life. And if someone would ask you, do you think this has any life in it? You'd say, no, there's no life in this table. Just an inanimate object, a still object. Why is that? Because it's so covered over and so concealed that it's completely invisible, the life within. But nevertheless, the Arizal tells us that in every single creation, there is life. You, Almighty, give life to all of them, absolutely all of them. And in the second section of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe speaks about this. It's not just the life, it's existence. So there's the godly energy that gives it to existence. If the godly energy would stop giving life to this object for 1 second, it would stop existing. Right? It only exists because Hashem is recreating it every second from nothing to something. So that's a godly energy, a godly life that's recreating it, and that is its soul. Everything has a soul. But in certain things, the soul is more visible. And in certain things, the soul is so wrapped up in coverings and garments that it's totally invisible. So the last words that we learned, I believe we learned this last week, was Benirim Mason. There's Dvarim Chumriyim Begashmiyim. There are things that are corporeal and physical, and they appear like dead. There's no Eir V'chayis revealed in them whatsoever. You know what? Since Mrs. Safran has suggested that maybe we didn't turn the page, just go quickly over the last few lines of the previous page. Back to page Ayin Beis. 6 lines from the bottom of the page. It starts B'chol kach atzmu v'gavru halabushim. You see the place? B'chol kach atzmu v'gavru halabushim asher nisav baruch hu malbishu master b'hem ha'er v'chayis. The garments in which the Infinite One, blessed be He, has enclosed and concealed the light and the life force are so intense. To the point that He created this physical and corporeal world, literally corporeal and physical, and it gives it existence, and gives it life, through the life force and the light, that He draws down to it and shines into it, a light which is enclosed and covered over and hidden in the many and intense garments that conceal and hide the light and the life force. To the point where no light and no life is visible at all. You see corporeal and physical things, they appear like dead. However, that's only what it appears. Well, let's find out what the truth is. However, the truth is that within them, there's a light and a life force that is creating them ex nihilo continuously. That they should not revert to become total nothingness as they were. The Alter Rebbe explains in Shara Yichud B'Emunah that the fact that the Eibishter created the world something from nothing, which means the nothingness that they started with wasn't a potential something. Alter Rebbe gives the mashal over there about how are we to understand the fact that creation has to be a recurring experience every second. Hashem renews in His goodness every day, and not only every day, but every minute and every second, the works of creation. And he says that it's very easy to make the mistake and compare the creation to let's say a silver cup or a silver candelabra, where a craftsman made this silver cup or the silver candelabra out of a chunk of silver. So the craftsman doesn't have to recreate it every second. He created it once. He made it into a cup or made it into a chunk of silver once, and then he went on his merry way, and it remains a cup. It remains a chunk. It remains a candelabra. He doesn't have to keep recreating it. So why do we say that Hashem has to keep recreating the world from nothing to something? So he says the reason is because the craftsman didn't make the becher or the leichter. He didn't make it out of nothing. He made it out of a chunk of silver. So that's something from something. Something from something has the potential. The original something that you used to make the something from had in it the potential to become whatever you're trying to make it into. And all you did was you revealed its potential, and therefore you don't have to be there continuously making it happen again and again and again. But when Hashem created the world, something from nothing, the nothing that He created didn't have a potential of becoming something. It was absolutely nothing. It only became something because Hashem made it into something. And when Hashem makes it into something, but it's really supposed to be nothing. As far as it itself is concerned, it's nothing. It's only the power, the creative powers of Hashem that are making it into something. So as long as those creative powers are making it into something, it's going to be something. As soon as those creative powers stop making it to be something, it's going to naturally revert to what it is naturally, what it is essentially. What is it essentially? Absolutely nothing. And he uses the analogy to explain this. He used the analogy of the splitting of the Red Sea. When Hashem split the Red Sea, and the Jewish people crossed, and the water stood like a wall on the side, what made the water stand like a wall? So it says in the Pasuk that there was a miraculous easterly wind that kept the sea split. And all night that miraculous easterly wind continued to blow, and the Jewish people were able to cross on the dry land, and the sea remained standing as a wall. As soon as that easterly wind stopped, or if that easterly wind would stop for 1 second, what would happen? The sea would revert to its natural state of being flowing water and would come plopping down. Not only what would have happened, but it did happen. As soon as the Jewish people finished crossing, the wind stopped blowing, and the Egyptians were now in the sea, and the wind stopped, and the sea came plopping down on them. That wasn't a miracle. That was the cessation of the miracle. The miracle of the sea splitting stopped, and Hashem continuously blowing that miraculous wind to keep the sea split, that stopped, and the waters came plopping down in their natural way. So the same thing is true about creation. The force of creation, the power of creation, is creating and recreating the world every split second. If it would stop for 1 second, the world would stop existing immediately. It would be instantaneously, not only not stop existing, it would be like it never existed before. The Twin Towers once existed. Then they were knocked down. So we can still tell the story that there was once a Twin Towers. But why? Because the concept still exists. Even though the building doesn't exist anymore, but the concept exists. So there's what to talk about. There's a history. But why? Because Hashem doesn't only recreate every second the building. He also creates and recreates every second the history and the concept. But if Hashem would stop creating something, not only would it not exist from now on, it wouldn't even be anything to talk about. Because the concept wouldn't be there. Don't forget, before creation, it didn't exist. Now that it exists, it only exists because Hashem is recreating it every second from nothing to something. If he would stop recreating it, it would revert to total nothingness, like it never existed. And the only reason that it does exist is because Hashem is recreating it every second from nothing to something. And that is its life. That energy coming from Hashem, that creative energy coming from Hashem, that's its life, and that's its existence. The Erzeh, this light, this energy, this power, this comes from the infinite one, blessed be he himself. The only thing is, this energy and this light that's coming from the infinite one, blessed be he himself, has been enclosed in many garments. And that's what we were speaking about last week, how the process of Ishtalshalus, the process of the chain of worlds, is as you're coming lower down the line, there are more garments that are concealing the divine energy and the divine light. So it's harder to recognize it. It's harder to identify. But it's still, everything that is happening is only happening because the divine energy is making it happen. So the responsibility is 1,000% that Hashem's infinite creative ability. But it's much more concealed as you come into the lower worlds. More garments, there's thicker garments. It's just that it's been enclosed in many garments. It says in Eitz Chaim from the Arizal, Chaim Vital, the senior disciple of the Arizal, and he quotes from the Arizal. So what does he say? He says, that the light and the life force of the physical corporeal globe, the earth, globe of the earth, which is visible to the eyes of flesh. Now, let's just get this very clear. There are spiritual worlds, and there's the physical world. In the physical world itself, we mentioned before that there's 4 kingdoms: human, animal, vegetable, and mineral. When we say hachumri, Kadur ha'aretz hachum, the physical, corporeal globe. We're emphasizing, first of all, that we're not speaking here about a spiritual realm. We're speaking here about the physical world. And we're speaking about the corporeal physical world, meaning that which is completely corporeal and no soul whatsoever that meets the eye. So we're not speaking here about humans. We're not speaking here about animals. We're not speaking about vegetables. We're speaking about the inanimate earth. That's the kadur ha'aretz hachumri anira le'enei basar, which can only be seen by the eyes of flesh. In other words, in the earth, there's not only earth, there's also the capacity for vegetation, right? The power of vegetation is in the earth. That's why when you put a seed in the earth, it causes vegetation to grow, because the earth has in it the potential and the capacity to cause things to grow. But you can't see the power of growth in the earth with your eyes. You can see the results of the power of earth with your eyes. That's the trees and the vegetables that are growing from the earth. And with your mind, you can reach a conclusion that if the earth is producing all these things, it must have that power within it. Wow, Hashem put an incredible power in the earth. But you don't see the power, you only see the results of your power. You need to use your mind, the eyes of your mind, to see that power. What can you see with the eyes of flesh? With the eyes of flesh, you can only see the physical earth. So that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about Aretz HaChumri, Hanira Le'enei Basar, the corporeal earth, which is visible to the eyes of flesh. And the Arizal says that the V'chayis, the light and the life force, that is giving existence to the physical earth, that is visible to the eyes of flesh, Umi Malchus the Malchus Dasti, comes from the spiritual realm of Malchus of Asiya. In other words, there's four worlds: Atzilus, Briya, Yitzira, and Asiya. The lowest one is Asiya. In each world, there's 10 spheres. Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, Netzach, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hayt, Yisayid, Malchus. The 10th and last of the spheres is Malchus. So the last sphere in the lowest sphere in the lowest world is Malchus of Asiya. Now, Malchus, like all the other spheres, is composed of all 10 spheres. So you have Chachma of Malchus of Asiya, Bina of Malchus of Asiya, Das of Malchus of Asiya, Chesed of Malchus of Asiya, Gvura of Malchus of Asiya, Tiferes of Malchus of Asiya, Netzach of Malchus of Asiya, Hayt of Malchus of Asiya, Yesod of Malchus of Asiya, and the lowest of the lowest of the lowest is Malchus of Asiya. Says the Arizal that the energy, creative energy, which is the life force that gives existence to the physical, corporeal earth, is coming from Malchus of Asiya, which is a spiritual realm. Ubesaycha Malchus the Yitzira. And then within it is enveloped the Malchus of Yitzira. Because Asiya only exists because it's an extension and a further concealment from Yitzira. So the Malchus of Yitzira is enveloped and enclosed within the Malchus of Asiya, which is the energy and the life force of the physical earth. V'chulu, etc. Meaning that in Malchus of Yitzira is enclosed the Malchus of Briya. And in the Malchus of Briya is enclosed the Malchus of Atzilus. And in Malchus of Atzilus, you have all the 10 spheres of Atzilus. As we said, in Malchus of Atzilus, you have Chachma of Malchus of Atzilus, Bina of Malchus of Atzilus, right? So you have all the 10 spheres within Malchus. To the extent that within all of them, you have the 10 spheres of Atzilus. Which the 10 spheres of Atzilus we know are in Atzilus. We have a principle that the Almighty and His energies are one, and the Almighty and His vessels are one. So the world of Atzilus is made up of 10 spheres. Each one of those 10 spheres has the light of the vessel, the light of the sphere, and the vessel of the sphere. And both the light and the vessel are absolutely united with the essence of Hashem. That's why we said at the very beginning of Tanya, we said when we speak about God's wisdom, He and His wisdom are one. Because we're talking about the wisdom in the world of Atzilus. And in the world of Atzilus, He and His wisdom are one. So there's 10 spheres, which are enclosed in Malchus of Atzilus, which are then enclosed in Malchus of Briya, which are then enclosed in Malchus of Yitzira, which are then enclosed in Malchus of Asiya. And that's the life force that keeps the physical, corporeal world in existence. That has within it the 10 spheres of Atzilus, which are absolutely united with the emanator himself. So even though it's so concealed, because it's come through so many contractions and so many concealments, But what really is contained within it is the infinite energy coming from Hashem himself. So the higher worlds have less vestments, less concealments, less garments, and therefore it's more visible in them that their existence is completely dependent on Hashem's energy. In the lower worlds, there's more concealments, there's more garments, so it's less visible. And you come to the lowest realm, which is the physicality in the physical world, the corporeality in the physical world, that has the most garments. So it's completely invisible. Hashem's effect on it is totally invisible because it's so covered. But it doesn't mean that in reality it's any less Hashem than anything else is. Just that it's hard for us to identify it because it's so covered. So coming back to the subject of this chapter, is on one hand we say when it comes to the infinite essence of Hashem, he is equally present everywhere. Equally present in the highest realms, in the lowest realms, just like in the lowest realm he's concealed, in the highest realm he's also concealed. Because he's called Stimu D'chol Stimun, the one who's concealed from the concealed. As far as the energy expressing itself, the expression of the energy to give life and existence to the worlds, and each world according to its capacity, there's a difference between each world and the other. So just like in the mashal of the human experience, we said that on one hand, where's the soul? Everywhere, whole body, equally. At the same time, we said, look at the different parts of the body. You see how every part of the body has a totally different level of life force expressed in it. First of all, they're different. Like the ears have the power of hearing and the eyes have the power of vision. And also, as you go lower in the body, they're also coarser and less life, less full of life. Right? The brain has a lot more life in it than the heels do. In the sense of expression of life. And in the same way, in the worlds, where is Hashem? Hashem is everywhere. No difference from one place to another. But where is Hashem expressed? Where is his life force expressed? In every world, it's expressed differently. Now, if you remember what we learned at the beginning when we spoke about the neshama, there's a third component. That is the unit from which the expression of life comes forth. Right? We learned about the neshama, we said there's the essence of the neshama, which is everywhere equally. There's the expression of life, which comes to every part of the body differently. And then where does that expression of life come from? Because the neshama is indivisible. So wherever this expression of life is coming from, obviously has a potential differentiation that is allowing it to express itself in a different way in every aspect of the body. So there's a missing link over here, which is why the Alter Rebbe concluded that there's really three levels. There's the essence of the neshama. There's the expression of life that comes to every part of the body in accordance with its capacity and its level. And then there is the source of all that energy within the soul itself, not the essence of the soul. It's the essence of the energy that's going to emanate from that essence. And that's the in-between stage. So the corresponding level in the divine, in chapter 51, we went through stage 1 and stage 3. We spoke about how the essence of the divine is everywhere equally, totally indivisible. That's like the essence of the neshama is in the whole body equally, totally indivisible. We spoke about how the energy coming from Hashem to the world is different in every world and in every level of the world, similar to the way the energy coming from the soul to the different parts of the body is varied. And then there's one missing link, which is that source from where the varied energy comes from. And that we're going to come to in chapter 50. That's the Shekhinah. Okay? Should be a very freilich and Purim cotton and Shushim Purim cotton. And the best recipe to the most freilich of Purim cotton and Shushim Purim cotton that we can expect is Mashiach will come today. And by the time Purim cotton and Shushim Purim cotton will be here, we'll be in the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, then it'll be Simchas Olam Al Reisha. I just want to give a little warning. That is that Mashiach comes today, Sanhedrin is appointed. They might want to reconsider the leap year. So it might be Purim tomorrow night and Pesach in 4 weeks. Be careful. But it's very unlikely that will happen because the reason that Hillel Sanhedrin way back then decided that this year should be a leap year is because we're in February now. And a Pesach has to be in the spring. So it's very unlikely that the Sanhedrin will rule different, because it's still February.
Why would the Sanhedrin angry?
No, the Sanhedrin has to decide in the month of Adar whether to make it one Adar or 2 Adars. And in time of Hillel, they saw that this wasn't able to continue because of the tsaris and the persecutions and everything. So they convened the Sanhedrin, and they were Makadish all the months and all the years till Mashiach comes. Right? And when Mashiach comes, the Sanhedrin the new Sanhedrin will be appointed. They can adjust it as they see fit. The Rabbi wants to explain just what I said. In Hayom Yom, you find something very interesting. In Hayom Yom, in the first Adar, it says Adar Aleph. Every day, Adar Aleph. In the second Adar, it says Adar Sheni. The Rebbe points out that it's not consistent. It's either Adar Rishon and Adar Sheni, or Adar Aleph and Adar Beis. Why does it say Adar Aleph and Adar Sheni? It says an interesting thing, because Adar Aleph can mean the first Adar, it can also mean one Adar. Until Adar Sheni comes along, we don't know if it's going to be, if this is one Adar or the first Adar. Because when Mashiach comes and the Sanhedrin reconvenes, they can adjust it as they see fit. Just one thing, I think Mrs. Marsh was about to ask, and
how did they make the criterion? I know the criterion is the Pesach should go in
the spring.
But each year it has to be, now if it's not made a decision every year, how does the cycle of the 19 years work out?
Okay, so the cycle of the 19 years was set up by Hillel.
Yes.
During the time of Sanhedrin, it wasn't the cycle of 19 years. Each year, they evaluated the place of the sun and the place of the moon, and where the lunar calendar would take us and where the solar calendar would take us, and they decided if it needs to be a leap year or not. And they were also allowed to take other considerations into effect, like, for example, if the roads leading to Yerushalayim were not in good condition, they needed more time to fix them. So they could take that into consideration. If the crop, I don't know if the word crop is the right word for it, of sheep and goats that were necessary for the Korban Pesach was a bit slow, the industry was a bit slow, they could take that into consideration. Because for all the Yidden to bring a Korban Pesach, you needed a massive amount of sheep.
What happened now when we have this 19-year cycle? How is it decided which of the 19 years?
So there is a 19-year cycle that starts at a certain point. Remember, Tafshin Lamed Ches, I remember the Rebbe was very strong about the fact this is the end of the cycle. Tafshin Lamed Ches started a new cycle. It goes for 19 years, and in every 19 years, years 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 17, and 19 are leap years. So this year, if I'm not mistaken, is year 8. That's why 2 years ago, we had a leap year. It's unusual, but 2 years ago, we had a leap year. Now we have another leap. So it's because this is year 6 and year 8, to the best of my knowledge. Yes, I'm sorry.
What happens to people whose birthday is this month? If they get rid of it, what happens?
Okay, so the answer to it is like this. If a person was born in Adar Aleph, your question is, right? So that's not a problem at all. Adar is Adar. So if a person is born in Adar Aleph, then when it comes next year, let's say a person was born the 12th of Adar Aleph. So it comes next year, the 12th of Adar, they're a year old. That's their birthday.
I've seen this previous because we joke about my daughter. She's got her, because she was born at we kind of joke about it.
Yeah, it's a good joke, but in fact, it's not an issue at all. If anything, the question would be someone who's born in Adar Sheni, which is the extra. It's also not a problem. But Adar Rishon is the main Adar. It's only as far as Purim is concerned that we make Purim in Adar Sheni. Adar Sheni is the addition, is the added month.
If a person is now out in Adar Rishon, do you also celebrate it in Adar Sheni as well?
If you were born in Adar Rishon, I believe the answer would be no, because you weren't born in Adar Sheni. You were born in Adar Rishon.
If you're born in
a regular Adar, that's where your question would be about.
Yes, that's what I mean.
So if you're born in a regular Adar, so in Halacha, birthdays are significant only at bar and bas mitzvah. And in bar and bas mitzvah, you have to be able to be going into the new year, 13 and 1 day, 12 and 1 day. So therefore, if you're born in a regular Adar, you celebrate your bar or bas mitzvah in Adar Sheni, because only then are you going into the next year. However, there's two aspects to a birthday. One aspect of a birthday is you're entering into the next year. You become a year older. The other aspect of a birthday is it's the day that corresponds to the day you were born. So as far as that aspect of the birthday is concerned, it would be fair to say that there's some element of that in both Adars. I didn't see this written, but I heard that somebody once asked the Rebbe, his birthday was the 25th of Adar. Rebbe Chaim Mushkin, the Rebbe's wife. Birthday was the 25th of Adar. I asked her, when do you keep your birthday? In Adar Rishon or in Adar Sheni? She was born in a regular Adar. So she said, my husband goes to the Oyhel, both. So I understand that to mean that even though you can only become entering into the next year in Adar Sheni, but your birthday in Adar Rishon is also the day that corresponds to the day you were born, because it's Adar. This is the day you were born. You don't become a new year yet. And then the question about changing your capital, say capital according to the age. So it is said, I can't vouch for this 100%, but it is said that the Rebbe, we saw the Rebbe saying his capital and the Rebbe's capital, when the Rebbe would come in for Kriyas HaTorah on a Monday and a Thursday. So while the Minyan was saying Ashrei and Avolotzion, the Rebbe would say his capital and the Rebbe's capital. In fact, it was a whole thing. People could put down a tillim. The Rebbe, I have a tillim that was the Rebbe said his capital and the Rebbe's capital. I shouldn't say I have it. I put it down when I was a chassan, and I gave it as a gift to my colleague. So my wife has it. And so it is said that during the month between the 25th of Adar Rishon and the 25th of Adar Sheni, the Rebbe would say two capitals for the Rebbe. Previously, the old capital and the new capital.
And if you would put on a given detail, within Adar Rishon, then you don't think in Adar Sheni.
I don't think so. I know there is an opinion that says that even if you're born in Adar Rishon, your mitzvah and bas mitzvah should be in Adar Sheni because it has to be full years, but that opinion is not taken to halacha. If you're born in Adar Rishon, your bar mitzvah and bas mitzvah is in Adar Rishon. In fact, it's interesting, this year, you had bar mitzvahs in Adar Rishon. The last time that we had the leap year, there were no bar mitzvahs the entire month because 13 years ago was a leap year. But 13 minus 2 years ago was not a leap year. So for a whole month, there were no bar mitzvahs. Well, give her as many as you want.
The whole time.
You should have a lange, gesunde Jahr with a lot of mazel. Rabbi Simon, sorry for going over time.